Oh, there are some 6-foot garlands here. There are also 9-foot garlands here. And unless you're doing a gigantic mantle that needs a drape on either side, which we do a fair amount of, I cut these off to make them 6 foot. So whether this is a table runner and you just need one long continuous runner, or this is going to be draped over a mantle, or this is going to be surrounding a door, however long you need it, I have a 6-foot table. So I cut 3 feet off, and we're going to do this. So I've already fluffed this, and I've got it open to spine, and this is going to be the idea of layering, and I'm going to layer and continue to layer as I go. So pretty simple garland. It's going to be very natural, very organic looking. So the first thing I'm going to add is this long needle pine. So if I were to make a garland on this long needle pine, there's not a lot of structure if I'm going to bind in things. This has a lot of structure, so I can actually just use these fronds to bind things in. So I'm going to start with this, and this is a 6-foot long needle pine garland. So I have, if I open this up to center, so I'm just going to lay it out flat, because really I don't care about this one. This is just my backbone. So it's just a 9 by 12. Nice garland. It's going to add, you know, some weight to it, but it's going to give me more of a stable base. And when we're doing corporate installations or home installations that have to last for a long time, this is what we do. So I'm going to take this long needle. I'm going to start right there at the top. I'm just going to start to bind it in. So sometimes on these garlands, you'll have 2 different styles of fronds. You'll have skinny fronds and fat fronds. Skinny fronds are always best, but if you don't have them, whatever fronds you have at the point you need to bind. And again, I'm going to push this garland so it is as close to the spine as I can get it, just to make sure everything is really secure. So all the way down, I'm just going to do a couple quick twists. And so my garland, I must have cut just barely, maybe 2.5 feet off, so this doesn't end with long needle pine, but I can fix that. So I'm just twisting in this garland all the way down. Open it up, twist it in, and then I can shape this as I go. But ultimately, I'm going to be adding one more garland over the top of this. So I've got this piece of long needle pine, and I'm going to rob from up there. I'm going to shut this off. You guys can still hear me, right? Yes. Okay, there's a little bit of a buzz, so I'm just going to drop that down. Okay, so I'm going to take one of these pieces way up here that you're not going to even know. I'm just going to cut that off. I'm going to add it in down here, and I'm just going to glue it in. I'll probably glue it in and then bind over that area where it's glued in. So just got that. So now I've got that nice tail. And just a couple twists over the top of that. Okay, so now on this one, I've got those little pine cones, and as much as I can, I'm going to raise those up so that hopefully they won't get quite lost. But if they do, it's not the end of the world. But anything that's in that garland that I'm laying over the top, I want it to show. So I'm going to move those out of the way. And then this is one of the pre-made garlands. I mean, this is beautiful by itself. So if I were to buy this, then I would probably add ribbon or more berries or something just to make it my own and then just sell it. But this is a really easy base to add stuff into. So you don't have to do a lot to it. I'm going to use this to just layer over the top. And I have 2 of these. So I'm going to layer this in over the top of this, which is going to add a couple different styles of evergreen. But I'm going to layer 2 of these. So I'm going to start this way high. You've got that nice big pine cone. I'm going to cinch that pine cone in.
You wouldn't start with that pin in the middle so it's hidden and on the ends are open?
You are exactly, absolutely 100% right, which is what I had planned to do. If this were going to be a door swag, then I could do what I'm doing. But you're absolutely right. That was the method to my madness. However, I forgot. Okay, so we're going to layer this here and let this hang over the edge. And we're going to layer this here and let this hang over the edge. Brilliant, thank you. And then if this were going on a mantle, you would have finish on both ends. So we're just going to pull this. And we're going to start from the center with this one, find out where we want it to end. And I like how a garland tapers down to thinner. So with this being so nice by itself with that magnolia, make sure I have the magnolia facing the right direction. And we've still got that spine opened up. And we're going to just go through and attach. And I try to attach with different fronds. That prevents these fronds that if you're attaching with only the same fronds each time, they twist shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, and then you end up with a knot. So if I can attach with different fronds, then I'm pulling. It gets a little trickier, but eventually that base garland really just disappears, and what you're left with is really nice, lush garland. So in doing this, you can custom create whatever style or look you need. So if you just needed lawn needle pine, but you needed a good solid base to glue into, you would have that by just leaving it alone before we added this. But this has some long needle pine, and then it's got some different varieties of evergreen in addition to some magnolia. So we'll have corporate installations or residential installations where we will start with that basic garland. Sometimes we need a frosted something, so we'll layer a frosted. We had one where it's just snow pine. We just needed snow pine. But the snow pine was so wispy. We didn't have anything to anchor into all the ornaments and berries and other things we had to add into it. So we just did the same thing. So I've got that end. And now I'm going to overlap this. So wherever I wanted this to end, work backwards. And then this is going to overlap and really create that center focal area. So if this were on a hearth, you'd have that beefier area where you've got the bulk of everything overlapping in the center. And this is going to be fairly simple. So when we're attaching this or attaching this on the front of a mantle or laying it on the front of a mantle, then there's also the issue of, like I'm designing it so it's really pretty like this, but my mantle is up here. And if all I see is the edge, then how do you anchor it? So a lot of the time, if we can do this in our customer's home, we'll put a nail in between the mantle and the wall. So it'll be right, not into the mantle itself, but in between the mantle and the wall. And that'll be our anchor point. And a lot of the time, we will actually use this, and we'll anchor around that nail and then anchor to the front. So that actually creates this sort of suspended. And you can create it leaning like this. The other thing you can do is bulk up the center. So we've done it with styrofoam before. We just add styrofoam bits behind it so it's actually raised up on the backside, gives it something to lean against. If for some reason, maybe you have a stone hearth or a stone and a stone wall behind, we have a couple of those, and that's where we'll just take it and then build it up from the back. So we'll finish attaching this. And then after we get all these levels together, I want to make sure that all of the things that I want to show are showing. And none of the things that I don't want to show are showing. And we'll be able to shape and fluff it again. So the first time I'm shaping and fluffing, I'm just opening it to center. Okay, so now everything is pretty much anchored. And then I want to make sure that my long needle pine comes up through my evergreens. This is where you really give it some nice shape. Got my big pine cones. And I'm going to pull some of that long needle up through this. So if this were just sitting on a mantle right now, you could just leave it like this right now. But we're not gonna. Because why would we do that? That's too easy. So I've got 2 different kinds of ribbon. So this is really going to be very simple. It's 3 different kinds of garland, 2 different kinds of ribbon, and then I may or may not need to add some extra pine cones over the top of it just to give it a little more of the smaller pine cones. So I have these I can add in afterwards. But I have this really pretty, this is 100 width. And this is on that peppermint tree. And it's behind me, and I'll talk about this next. I'm going to do the same thing I've done on the other ones, except this time I might actually bind in with bind wire. So I'm going to create that ribbon loop. If I can find 2 decent fronds, I will, and look, there they are. And then I'm going to create some nice depthy loops. Depthy. Good word. Depthy. And I'm going to remember to go back and forth and not just down the middle. Particularly, let's say the application for this is a mantle. And that's where my my available fronds are anyway, are way underneath. So I'm going to pull this over to the other side. And maybe go clear underneath it, pull my berries out. And so what usually happens is it ends up stretched like this, which is pet peeve number whatever I told you it was. But if you make sure and leave enough play in the ribbon when you anchor it down, you can avoid that. And it might seem like too much when you're doing it, but by the time you cinch it down, there goes the rest of your give in your ribbon. So far I'm good with the fronds that I have available. I'm just going to loop that up. And this is, it's a beefy version of, I really like this ribbon because it's got that stitching in it. Where that stitching is where the wire is. So the wire is not on the outside of the ribbon. It's actually going through the center, but it gives it a really cool stitched textural effect. Okay. And then we're going to end this the same way, so this would be reversible, right? So it wouldn't matter if you have it on left to right or right to left, although almost every garland I do has some sort of front, has some sort of front face. It's almost hard not to. I'm going to look back here. If we're interested in symmetry, I want to know, where does my ribbon start? My ribbon doesn't actually start all the way to the end. So I'm about where I need to end this, so I'm just going to loop this and cinch it down. And then with the other ribbon, I'll start, because it's a smaller width, I'm going to start that further down, and then I'll carry that through. So it's going to end more tapered, just like my garland is. This is where I'm going to take one of my little pre-cut pieces of bind wire, and I'm going to bind it into one of these fronds. So, pre-cutting bind wire. A lot of the ornaments on these trees do not have an attachment, and even if they did, I'm going to add one of my own. So if you look at some of these trees, you'll see the ornament isn't under the frond, it's on top, especially when you get to the bottom. So especially on some of the bejeweled ones, on the blue ones, you'll see an ornament that looks like it's sitting on top of the tree instead of underneath the frond. So what I do, instead of take this, cut a piece, put it on my ornament. Take this, cut a piece. I don't do that. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a bunch of them at once. So now I have what, 30? So I'm going to take that off my hand and cut. And these are all my hangers, okay? So on, let's say this one. Isn't that cool? And it's plastic. But I could hang it with this, but then I have to loop it over the frond. So I'm just going to cut that off. And then I'm going to add in this. And then I can hang it anywhere. So if the frond is this big, but I want it to hang here, I don't have to loop it over that frond. I'm just going to attach it. Or if it's a smaller ornament and I want it on top, I'm just going to attach it. So see, it'll be like Where's Waldo in the ornament world out there. You can find out which ones did she attach to the top. But look at the bottom and you'll see. If you see one that's sitting on the top of the frond, that's where. On top of the limb, that's what I did.
And you just spun that ornament to attach that to it.
This? Yeah. So it's open. So like, okay.
It's not just a loop. It's not just loose in that hole.
No, it's spun.
Ornament, so it's
Right.
on the body
Yeah.
part before it's
So for example, if we come up here, and let's say this limb right here, if I wanted to attach it, oh, let's say way back here, I could just spin that and attach it. Or if this were smaller, I probably wouldn't do it with one this size, but let's say I wanted it to sit right here. I would just do this. Pet peeve. I have a lot of pet peeves. It's a problem. I'm trying to get better. But you'll also notice that it's rare that you see an ornament just hanging from its gold thread if I did use the gold thread to hang it. What I'll do, let's pretend this is a loop, okay? And I'll take it and I'll put it on. I don't want to see that. So what I'll do is I'll take this and then I'll spin it over. So you'll see that on a lot of the ornaments too. It's rare that you'll see one that's just suspended by its gold thread. I'll usually wrap it around a frond, so I'm a control freak, that's what it is. I have to control where it is.
More secure anyway.
True.
The little guys kind of go.
Right. Right.
Now, do you install that you've been talking about, corporate-wise or individual homes?
Yeah.
Do you do that on every ornament and every tree that you're doing?
Okay, so
Because how do you take that down?
here's a little, well, ultimately you're going to find what works best for you, your company, and how your company operates. What we do, I'll just tell you what we do. So we have a huge storage barn. We decorate, so if I were to decorate one of these trees, this for Mrs. Smith's home, the boho tree, I would attach every ornament within an inch of its life, and not like these are decorated for showrooms, so you could actually shop off the tree if you need to pull off something because you wanted to buy it and there's none left on the shelf. But if it's for a customer's home, it would be anchored, like everything would be anchored on there. So with the exception of glass. So what we do for corporate install, fully designed tree, let's say a 9-foot tree, we design it in 2 halves. We have a base that we take the top half off and we put it on. We deliver it in trucks, decorated. If there's any glass, crystal, anything like that, we add that in on site. When we take it down, we store it, decorated, with a sleeve covered in plastic in our barn. So, that's not going to work for everybody. Some people, you have all of the product that you need in that tree, and you're decorating on site, on their tree. But if it's our tree that we sold them, especially for corporate, occasionally for residential, but especially for corporate, we're going to do fully decorated trees, install them fully decorated, add any glass on site. That's what we do.
So they get the same tree until that tree wears
until that tree wears out. If it needs to be refreshed, if there's an ornament that's broken because of our storage, that's above my pay grade and how our general manager has figured that out with how that, you know, how we handle refreshing and light refreshing and things like that. And ultimately, if you have a tree that it's past its prime, then that's when we have to go back to a customer and say, okay, we can install it one more year. We really can't install it after this year, or your lights are out, we can no longer top dress with lights. You either need a new tree, you know, and that's like in the negotiation process of when you need to refresh that tree. Sometimes it'll be, we start with one tree and then next year they want to pump it up a little bit and they'll add maybe 24 new ornaments to that tree. But that's how we do it. I know a friend of mine does corporate installations up in Michigan, and they have all the products set aside for those trees, and those trees go up and then the product goes on. So it's really whatever works for you, your labor model, your pricing model, it's whatever is going to work best for you. Not everybody has a huge pole barn out back that they can store wrapped trees in. Not everybody has a scissor lift and bobcat and whatever that you can move those things in giant trucks to deliver fully decorated trees with a lift. We have trucks with lifts, and you roll the thing up and the lift goes up and you roll the thing in, but not everybody has that. So you have to work out, and then you have to account for the labor accordingly. It's definitely more labor intensive. We couldn't do half of what we do if we had to decorate every single tree every single year. So that's what works for us in our business model. Okay, cool? Yeah. Okay. What was that? Okay. Sidetrack, squirrel. So I'm going to add some of this lighter colored ribbon. And we're going to go clear to the end with this, and I'm going to attach this with one of my cool little things. I usually have these in the back pocket, my back pocket, loop side up, so I can just pull out a loop and do it. And then I go home and have all manner of wires in my laundry. Yeah, this bind wire, when it's available, I think it's coming back. I mean, you have like every other product issue, you know, sometimes shortages, but it's available in natural, which is this, and then a green, which is ideal for holiday, and brown. So 3 colors of bind wire. But I have all 3 colors on my design bench all the time. Most of the time I use the green and the natural. So now's where I start to run out of usable fronds, and I'm just going to snake this through. Might just wrap that one with a pine cone. Here's where you could bring in more berries. If you wanted to make this a more berry laden. But ultimately, we're going to keep this pretty simple. Next one, not so much. So I'm going to do 2 garlands, and then after this one, I'm going to talk about this garland behind me. And some hanging. We talked about hanging these things and how sometimes it's not so easy. Ooh, loose frond. So this adds a little lighter element, which is a contrast thing, and I don't necessarily have anything that's repeating this lighter color, except possibly some of the lighter pine cones and the last pine cones that we'll add into this. Just take another piece of bind wire, and then I am going to repeat this color. Brainstorm. Love how inspiration strikes. Okay, so I am going to repeat this color. Anybody guess what my brainstorm was that I could repeat this color in this ribbon? The bind wire, yes. So I'll show you a really cool thing with this bind wire. This is why I keep them in my back pocket. Unfortunately, I have no back pockets today, but I have teeth. teeth is, you know, our third hand, right?
Yep.
And we'll get this all the way to the end. And then we'll just add in a couple other accents. So my list of stuff for this was really minimal. So knowing I was going to keep it pretty simple. So I don't even have the option except, oh, and that other little inspiration. Yep, it happens. So I'm going to go back to the other end, see where specifically my ribbon ended. And I'm right there, so I'm just going to cut this off.
So you never do a tail, you always do a loop.
I won't say never do a tail. I say the reason I don't do a tail is because you almost every year have to go back and with corporate stuff that we do and residential stuff that we do and trim that tail. But I'd never have to trim a tail like this. We oftentimes will do like a swallowtail or a diagonal cut. If the ribbon is something I know is going to hold up and handle several years. Okay. I'm going to add in just a couple more things of different size pine cones. Help. Different. I like my ratcheting. Unfortunately, my good ratcheting wire cutters are not here. So I'm just going to add a little bit more pine cone, maybe beef up that center a little bit. And I'm going to cut off just the tail of this one. If I can avoid cutting a stem, I'm going to do it. So if I were to lay this in early on and I can bury that tail, absolutely, bury the tail, don't have to cut it. Anything that can save some time. And then we'll just add this other piece on the other end. Cut that out. Yeah, uh-huh. It's like you get it started and then. So I'm going to add this in down here. So Halloween, that's a great time to introduce the spider webs. Yes, so another segue here. You know how to do the spider webs, right? Yeah,
Oh, yeah, with the glue.
yeah. So I could cover this in spider webs. Yeah, we'll get it off eventually. Yeah, actually once it's dry it comes right off. Wait, yeah, it's cheaper than the other spider webs. Okay, so now this is fun. Because when you start to just pull this out, it naturally has a coil all its own, okay? So if you wanted to use this as just sort of an organic rope coil, we can add this in, just sort of wrap it around, and it gives us kind of like a raffia-esque, without the mess of raffia. And I'm just going to wrap it around. I'm just going to twist it around the fronds and then let those coils lay by themselves. It gives it a little more of an organic feel. Definitely repeats the color. Let me cut that off. What was that?
I totally thought you were going to do something else.
You thought I was going to do something else? You can make a bow. I mean, you can definitely make a bow. But I'm just going to go a little more freeform. A lot more freeform. A lot more organic flow with it. Just so it kind of has that raffia-esque look to it. Add as much or as little as you want. You can add a bird's nest. You know how to make a bird's nest with this stuff? No? Okay, I'll show you that too. Bird's nest? Okay, so if we were to just, I gotta have a little more at this end and then we'll be done. Okay. And nice spider web and tag. Yeah, okay, we'll hold it up.